champion. He played a great deck.
We laid beats on his deck and we were wrong.
Hey, wow! It's like from two good Magic players to two not good Magic players. That was uncanny. All right, okay, well, welcome back. It's Rich Hagan and Bill Stark here for the semi-finals of Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur. You're very welcome. We're going to get near enough straight into the action. This is what we've got for you. In semi-final one, Marcio Carvalho, Portugal, green-black, up against Johnny Magic, John Finkel, turning back the clock, white-blue deck. He is going to come out blistering out of the gun and hoping to overwhelm Carvalho. That is the basic gist of semi-final one. Semi-final two, down at the bottom bracket, Ming Shi of China has made it to the semi-final. He is playing a blue-white double Drowner of Secrets, Milieu to Tears kind of deck, up against Mario Pascoli, the Italian reigning champion. He's got a black-red deck. The monsters, they're okay. The removal is outstanding. So those are the two semi-finals. We are going to kick off, of course, with John Finkel against Marcio Carvalho. Scott Johns, 5 times Pro Tour top 8. He'll tell you what's going on the back table. You'll get the best of both matches, and we will get to that. 4 have left the arena. 4 remain. It's time for the semi-finals. Hello and welcome to the semi-finals of Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur here in Malaysia in the shadow of the Petronas Twin Towers. We have got 2 outstanding matches lined up for you here in the semis as you see the floor of the arena there. First of all, we have Marcio Carvalho. There you see him on the left of your screen from Portugal. Underway, he's doing the business, came through a 5-game set against Nikolai Herzog, a Hall of Famer. But top 8s don't get easy. Marcio Carvalho now faces another Hall of Famer in his way. There he is, the Shadow Mage Infiltrator himself, 1 blue and a black. Yeah, not really colour coordinated, Mr. Finkel, but he will not mind. What he will care about is that he is just 2 matches from an astonishing triumph. So that is our match. On the back table, you've got Ming Shi of China up against Mario Pascoli of Italy. We will keep you right up to date with that, but we are, of course, going to focus to begin with on Finkel against Carvalho. 0-0, and we are underway with Treefolk Harbinger for Carvalho and a Kithkin Greatheart for Finkel off Plains and Plains.
Yep, and it's worth noting with that Treefolk Harbinger, that was likely the first draw that Carvalho had, simply because he didn't play it on the first turn. The card he searched up, a 2-drop, 1/3, Bosque Banneret, and as we've stated before, John's deck is very aggressive, and in order to win, the Portuguese player needs to get in early and put up some defenses. So far, he's doing a good job of it, but John's still able to get in with his 2-1 Kithkin Greatheart, thanks to the Kinsbale Skirmisher he played on turn 3.
Yep, so that was a 3-2 when it came in. So Finkel's deck almost entirely white. We'll go through the deck lists for you as we go along. This is a classic pendulum-style matchup. The early game belongs to Finkel, and that's one of the reasons why. There's another Skirmisher. Out it comes. The Kithkin Greatheart goes in for 3. No blocks. Down to 14. The early turns are Finkel's. The late turns, thanks to the big Treefolk, Thorntooth, Witch and so on, that's going to be Carvalho's. Now the trick will be, where is the tipping point? Where does the mid-game start? Does it start turn 3? Carvalho's in great shape. Does it start turn 6? Finkel's in great shape. And somewhere in that crucible is where these games are going to be determined. Finkel goes in all the way across the board. 3 men into the red zone, still with 2 land up. I guess he represents Surge of Thought left. The players, of course, Bill, have seen each other's deck lists, so Marcio knows, as long as he's remembered, that Finkel does have such a card.
Yep, he knows that he's got Surge of Thought left. He knows that he's got the Coordinated Barrage. But the important thing to recognize right now is that John has missed 2 land drops in a row. So even though he's got 3 creatures on the board, things have already started out pretty poorly for him and spun out of control, as his opponent has managed to play 3 creatures which are relevant blockers, one of which is the Leaf-Crowned Elder we've talked about. If he hits with the kinship on that, things are only going to get worse for John. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does here.
Yeah, I mean, as it happens, we've had a look at Finkel's hand, and he does have the Surge of Thought Weft, so he will be looking for some seriously disadvantageous blocking from his Portuguese opponent.
He also has the Coordinated Barrage, although the Surge will get him a draw to hopefully put him into a position to hit that 3rd land.
Sure. So that looks like the Leaf Crown. What's he blocked with there? Is that
blocked with the
Harbinger? Sure, okay.
On the Kith King Greatheart, yep. And looks like John's going to go ahead and go for the Surge.
Yep.
Get a couple extra points in.
And can I draw a land? That's what he wants.
Not this time. Looks like he hit Distant Melody on that card draw.
Yep.
Got to count his hand up, see if he needs to discard. None of his creatures died that combat, which was good.
Marcio?
Yeah, yep. Marcio gets a look at a free card for the kinship. Doesn't hit it. Marcio, of course, splashing the white for double Oblivion Ring and playing black himself, but it doesn't look like he's been able to come up with any swamps himself. So
he's looking pretty mono green at the moment,
which is doing him just fine. He's got a 3/5 and Everbark Shaman, and that's going to pose some problems increasingly for John, although it looks like John's sitting on Weight of Conscience, which could be very helpful here.
Absolutely. And he's also got Pestermite in hand, and he's got Kinsbell Balloonist. Now, Kinsbell Balloonist, 2/2 for 4. It's a real late-game card. It's the card that you use when you've got your opponent to 6. You make it, they don't get to remove it, you come in with it, bring another guy in, and look, it has wings! Thank you very much. So, very much a finisher, really, the Kinsbell Balloonist, provided John's still got monsters in play.
Exactly, and it's one of those cards that gives a white-blue deck a little bit of reach, and when we talk about reach, we're saying getting through outside a traditional combat step on the ground, so whether it's with burn spells, evasive creatures in whatever regard, and by having that Kinsbell Balloonist, he gives himself the opportunity to do that and hopefully fly over all these tree folk, which are just... Well, that might actually make it irrelevant with the Cloud Crown Oak hitting the board.
Yep, 3/4. And we talked about reach. You've just said, in the sense of burn, this is keyword reach, capital R. And that is, well, we can reach up into the air and pluck your flyers up from the skies.
Exactly. Finkel did hit an island, however. I believe he's got the Mold Drifter sitting in his hand.
He has, so you're going to expect him to evoke here, right?
Not potentially, yeah. I would think that would be helpful, but he's also got Preeminent Captain, which you have to remember would, when getting into the combat zone, would help him further deploy his troops.
And there it is, you called it. And of course, he's got Pestermite in hand, so it's actually that Mold Drifter. He may get around to just naturally drawing the land and finally ending up with, here I am casting it for 5. He does have card advantage everywhere in hand at the moment.
Yep, and he's putting his opponent into a somewhat dangerous position. Feeling like he's ahead on the board, he might decide to start becoming aggressive, and that's a bad move for him, because if that Pestermite hits at the end of the turn, all of a sudden, there's a potential 8 damage getting through there. But Carvalho, a little bit more smarter than that, and picked up on it, passing without hitting his 5th land drop.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about having a plan going into matches, and Carvalho at lunch, he said, look, I understand that if I take, 5 to 6 points of damage in the first 5 turns, there is no way I lose that game from there. So he is all about how late can I go. Every turn that goes by, he feels that he is more and more in the game and a more and more overwhelming favourite.
Yep.
But the truth is, right here, he's down to 8. There's 4 monsters on the board to 3. The capacity for it to be 5 to 3, with the Pestermite tapping down, effectively making it 5/2, and at only 8 life. That is going to ask some serious questions of Carvalho.
You talked earlier about Pestermite being even better for the good players because they can potentially do extra plays with it. John had the opportunity there to play Pestermite on his main phase, but instead of tapping anything, untapping a Plains and then playing Gold Metal Harrier. He's going to opt not to do that, so we might see him use it aggressively in order to tap some of the blockers and get in on the following turn. Getting in with that Preeminent Captain would be pretty huge because it would allow the Kinsbell Balloonist to hit play.
Wow.
So even though John started with 2 less lands, the land struggles that Marcio Carvalho is dealing with here is actually going to potentially prove to be a bigger factor. It's so funny how in these professional games things swing back and forth so quickly because these guys just grind it out so hard.
But look what we've got there with 6 Forest. The 6th Forest, then we get Fertile Ground, and that is the end of mana worries for Carvalho, at least for now. And what's coming down?
Ooh, Thorntooth Witch.
Thorntooth Witch. Now, that is going to seriously swing things. And at this point, John Finkel must realise that we are near the end of his window of opportunity. The game may still have plenty to go, but his chances of winning are reducing. So out comes the Pestamite, end of turn. Carvalho just nods, yeah, okay, I understand, that's fine. And Finkel decides what's he going to tap. Is this going to be the Cloud Crown Oak that goes down?
Yeah, I would think so. Although you do have to remember he does have Coordinated Barrage, so he might tap not the best creature in order to kill it. But
yeah, he has. He's tapped down the Cloud Crown Oak. So although Carvalho looks in a strong position, knowing what we know of Finkel's hand, not only the reload opportunities with Muldrifter and Distant Melody, but he's actually going to be pretty close here to doing some incredible damage, because the Preeminent Captain, it comes in, you've called it, Kinsbell Balloonist comes in. That attacks, makes another guy fly.
This turn...
I wonder what the math's going to be on this. Let's have a look. 4th land for John. So he's now got 3 planes and an island. He sends the Preeminent Captain and everyone he can touch. And out comes Kinsbell Balloonist.
It's important to notice here, Rich, I don't think the Balloonist is going to give any creature flying.
Right.
It's because when it attacks, and it's already attacking.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
It's possible I'm wrong there. I am not a judge, but I believe it will not give another creature flying. We'll see what the ruling is.
Yeah, I think you're right, because we're beyond that point.
In any case, it's still a 2/2 flyer, and he's put his opponent in a position where he's got to block with that Thorntooth Witch. He actually makes John's Coordinated Barrage a potential huge spell here.
Absolute backbreaker, yeah.
And he's going to have to block, so the Thorntooth Witch will not be able to take control. And earlier when we were looking at these lists, one of the things I thought, I think Finkel's favored in the matchup, but if Marcio Carvalho manages to hold on the early game like he's sort of done here, and get that Thorntooth Witch online, things are not going to be looking good for John.
There is the barrage, there it goes. All right, and yet more opportunities for John. He's got a Gold Meadow Harrier in hand now. So that is going to negate a potential blocker.
Yep. He's going to get a considerable amount of damage in here, even though it costs him 2 creatures.
Yeah, and he's still got 5 on the board.
Yep.
And then, Carvalho down to 2. I think we are very nearly done.
Yep, this game looks pretty good in John's favor, but we'll see what the Portuguese player can come up with.
Yeah. Just looking through Marcio Carvalho's deck list, we'll talk about that a bit. What removal has he got that he could do with getting rid of the Preeminent Captain for a start? Although he's got the Cloud. No, he has to get rid of the Balloonist.
Yeah, he has to get rid of the
Cloud
Balloonist.
Crown Oak will get tapped by the Gold Meadow Harrier.
Yep, and of course last turn he was clever enough to make sure that the Preeminent Captain died by blocking correctly. He's going to play the Gilt-Leaf Palace and reveal an important card in his hand there.
Nameless Inversion, I believe.
Yep.
Can you look there?
He does have Oblivion Ring and Weed Pruner Poplar as well. If he can get the Oblivion Ring to hold off the Kinsbale Balloonist, there will only be 1 flyer, which will buy him a few turns, provided he uses the Nameless Inversion on the Gold Meadow Harrier. That's a question that also potentially means he could kill both the Kinsbale Balloonist and the Pestermite and leave the Harrier on the board, but that creates a situation where John can tap a creature at the end of his opponent's turn and then do it on his turn as well and get 2 in 1 turn.
So Oblivion Ring from Carvalho, and
it's going to target.
Finkel says, "Yeah, okay, you take my Harrier away."
Yep.
Black and green, Nameless Inversion, the Kinsbale Balloonist.
Yep, and doing that even though it's an instant on his own turn to prevent his opponent from having some type of trick that might be relevant.
You have 1 mana in your pool.
Oh, and John makes a real smart catch there. The Boss Banneret actually makes that Changeling spell cost 1 less, and that's something we've seen players get caught by a lot this.
Wow.
You have 2
So
cards left.
he will burn for 1, and that will put him down to 1.
It certainly will. Mana burn, not what you want on 2 life.
That's why Johnny Magic is one of the best ever. Takes a lot to put 1 by him.
And now 3, yes.
Okay, so 5th land, taps them all.
Going to give him a second
Muldrifter, there's the flyer. Draw 2 cards.
Your turn.
Passes back, and that is game on the board at the moment. There's 1 flying or reach blocker for Carvalho, 2 flyers on Finkel's side. Carvalho down at 1.
He's going to use his Everbark Shaman to thin his deck out of a few more forests.
Yep.
Trying to improve the number of action draws he has, and of course that refers to cards that have an impact on the game state. Lands right now not going to help him out that much. He's got plenty of lands. He's got double black. He's got access to the white he needs for his Oblivion Ring. Really, I think he's down pretty low. I know he's got Oblivion Ring as an out. We might be looking at that being the only one.
Here we go. Koala draws. He nods, gives himself a little shake. Fertile ground forest taps and then no, changes his mind. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Has he learnt from the banneret?
Looks like he has.
That's the Weed Pruna Poplar.
Now, we didn't get a look at the rest of the cards in his hand, but I think he's bluffing here. If he gets the turn back, he'll Weed Pruna Poplar the Pestermite, killing it, and then have a blocker for the Mold Drifter. But if John just smells what's going on here, he'll just attack with both, and Marcio will have to pack it in for the next game. But we'll see.
There's a red zone there. It's there for a reason. Distant Melody, John says, first of all.
Yep.
Let's get some cards in my hand.
And he could be looking for some tricks like a Mosquito Guard, which he can reinforce to pump his creatures. Yep, there, Marcio recognizes what's going on. John saw the bluff and has to pack it in. So John Finkel wins the first game, even after his opponent had a real good draw for beating his deck.
Absolutely. So we saw pretty much exactly what we anticipated. Finkel comes out early. Marcio tries to survive, gets to what looks like the mid game, but in fact there's still pressure coming from Finkel. More pressure, and eventually he takes it down. And Marcio will, I don't know, I don't think he'll take a lot of solace from that because it felt like he had a pretty presentable start to that game.
Yeah, absolutely. It looked like he was doing pretty well to begin with, but then we had a little bit of mana struggles on both. John, of course, had the mana struggles early, and then Marcio got the mana struggles late. Eventually got the swamps and the white source that he needed to be able to play all the spells in his deck, but it just didn't matter as John managed to overwhelm him with the amount of cards that he could play. Preeminent Captain getting that Balloonist into play was really, really critical, and it looks like Marcio is going to have an uphill battle this match. I really think in the semifinal, or in the quarterfinals rather, it would have been a better matchup for the non-John Finkel, for Nikolai Herzog to be there, simply because he had Final Revels, which would have been absolutely unreal against John's deck.
All right, well, we've got a great story for you down on the floor in the back table, still going at 0-0. We've got Scott Johns keeping an eye on that one for us. And Scott, what do you got down on the floor?
Well, we got a great game going here on Table B between Ming Shi and Mario. Totally different complexion from Ming's last game because now suddenly all of his creatures seem completely flammable. And on the other side, the creatures, the removal is really good, but the creatures aren't. So there's lots and lots of guys dying left and right. It's turning into a war of attrition. It's a really good fight. A real key. Ming was able to get up to enough mana to hard cast Knowledge Exploitation.
Oh, wow.
Going into his opponent's deck and taking out Violet Paul, killing the best creature, and getting a fairy in the process, courtesy of his opponent's great spells. So sometimes you don't have your own good removal, but why not get some from your buddy?
That's pretty exceptional. Now, that idea of the flammable creatures, that's what we were expecting. Pascal's Black-Red deck is packed full of top-quality removal. Just taking a look at some of the things that he's got. He's got a Shard Volley, he's got Pepper Smoke, Tar Fire, Lash Out, Release the Ants, Eye Blights ending, the Violet Pool that Ming was so delighted to see. So that's going to be an interesting one. I mean, we basically
felt that one just went down.
Potentially Pascal has the edge there. But we're hearing now that we do have a winner in game one. So what have we got in that first match, Scott? Give us the score if you can.
Actually, that one just finished. They were going at it left and right. It was getting down to the final wire. And one of the advantages the burn player has is being able to point things at the other guy's face.
The player has reached.
A Shard Volley
goes one up with
Shard Volley made it for the win.
Okay, Shard Volley does it.
In a good fight.
Right, so Ming 1-0 down there.
John has a great start here. Gold medal stalwart, revealing preeminent captain. That's very good.
Oh, thank you.
And we should point out to our viewers at home, some of you voiced concerns about the QuickTime feed. We're having some problems with that, so we're going to take that down now. But if you're watching right now, you're already on Windows.
Yeah, but we do just apologise for the inconvenience, especially if you're in the middle of the night, as I know some of you are staying up with all-night Pro Tour parties, kind of thing we do back in the UK when it's an Asian PT, and it is great to have you with us. We really do appreciate your time and the bags under your eyes. All right, so Cloud Crown Oak, that is a belter of a turn for Carly because that is an enormous blocker.
Again, having that acceleration on turn 2 is pretty key for him because if he manages to stabilize with his 4-drops, John's creatures just can't get through, and if he can, he'll put John in a position where he's got to overwhelm his opponent by just hitting a Distant Melody for 4 or 5 cards, playing every creature out and hoping his opponent's at 10 life, and that's enough. Right now he's at 18. John is probably not going to be getting through for a whole lot over the next couple turns. Yep, gets in for 4 here, but has to
and
set
that's
himself
with disperse,
back.
right?
Yep.
So 1 on a blue says go away. In for 4, 14 Carvalho now.
Missed another turn 3 land drop.
Now, we talked about land, and we're not going to second guess, but he is running 16.
Yes, he is running 16, and with good reason. His deck is a pretty low curve. It's one of those things where you don't want to see a whole lot of land. He hit one there. It's a risk that you take and hope it pays off. And so far today, it's paid off for John pretty well. It is worth pointing out that John, one of the world's most famous Magic players, got a pretty good early start, a lot of pro points, a lot of championships, a lot of real fame. So famous, actually, that a book has been written about his life called Johnny Magic and the Card Shark Kids.
Yeah, and I've read that, and it is a top read. It really is.
It's very interesting. Thorntooth Witch hits for Carvalho. Pretty big play by him.
Okay, the Kithkin Zethanaut does not get its first kinship underway, so it's back to being a 2-2 piece of mediocrity.
Yep.
Looking at John's hand, he's got a Sen's Air there.
Got the preeminent captain. He's going to send his creatures in. He does have Surge of Thought Weft, so that could potentially cause some problems for his opponent, especially because the Mosquito Guard that is in his hand would allow him to kill whichever creature's Marcio blocks with.
Yeah, Reinforce is a really nice addition to Magic. I really like it.
Yep, I do too. And it's particularly good for the Kithkin deck, which got both Bombardier and Mosquito Guard. You don't see Mosquito Guard played as much, but it definitely has been important.
So there is the Surge. And
the Mosquito Guard on
there it is.
That'll take down the Cloud
4-4
Crown.
over a 3-4.
Yep.
I win. Thank you very much.
6 gets in on his opponent.
Any cards?
That's 6.
1, 2, 3.
Because he played the Surge of Thought Weft, both of his 2-power creatures go up 1, of course, and so that'll drop his opponent to 8 in pretty dangerous realm. Now the question is whether or not the Tree Folk barrage that we can only assume is coming from the Portuguese player will just undo everything that John's tried to do. Oh man, and what a Tree Folk to play. The Weed Pruner is going to not only take out that gold medal thanks to the Zephyronaut thanks to the Thorntooth, but if John doesn't do something fast, that Kithkin Greatheart doesn't have much lawn for this world.
No, I hope it hasn't got family. All right. Finkel lays land number 5. He's got Wizened Sen. That, of course, would take the Greatheart out of range of the Weed Pruner Poplar. Wizened Sen comes down. There we are. So now the question is, does he do a bluff here? Does he just try and increase the board position, or does he run things in representing a trick? I guess the thing is, Marcio's seen the deck list.
Yeah, Marcio knows what tricks are there. I think it's better to just, as he did, he used all his mana. He hesitated thinking about playing the Sen's Air, but I think I like the preeminent captain. That will allow him to play the Air next turn for free, potentially. Carvalho does have a Tree Folk in the form of Skeletal Changeling.
It's also worth saying that when you have a bluff, that only works when they don't have to block. But with Carvalho at 8, realistically, he had to block regardless. So to represent a trick and then, well, I'm going to block no matter what you've got, because if you have a trick, I just have to die to it. That's fair enough. I'm not going to let your monsters through. So bluffs are pretty tricky. I mean, we've seen some very tricksy bluffs through the weekend, and it's nice that aspect of Magic is available. Some sets are pretty straight ahead, but right now you can do things in that regard.
Yep. Marcio's got a big play there. He puts his Thorntooth at risk. John does take the opportunity to double block, hoping for the best. Marcio's got the Briarhorn to just evoke, excuse me, and John's got a Moldrifter, which is pretty important here because he's way behind, but things aren't looking good with all the creatures that his opponent is playing. He's got a 3/4, the 3/3, a Skeletal Changeling that's 2/2, the Bramblewood Paragon,
the Bramblewood Paragon up at the top, I do believe.
Yep, and it's not looking good for Johnny Magic.
No, and exactly what we said, early game Finkel.
No block.
We found the mid game, and now this is the late game.
Yep, absolutely.
Look at that. That is 4 enormous monsters piling into the red zone. Carvalho thinking, yeah, I'm pretty happy here.
Yep, it's been a good game so far for our folks watching from Lisbon.
It's 1-1, absolutely. All right, well, let's actually give you Carvalho's deck list. He kicks off with 10 forests, the single plains and 5 swamps, and a Gilt-Leaf Palace. So that's his 17 land. We've got 2 Oblivion Ring, which he's just got that plains for, which is fine. And then Black Poplar Shaman, Nameless Inversion, which obviously works fantastically with almost anything. Such a great spell. Thorntooth Witch is a real MVP for him, both in the quarters against Nico and here again. It's going to be key, especially as turn after turn it's just going to machine gun a guy down. And in a way, it counteracts that card drawing that John's got in his deck.
Yep.
All right, on we go. We've got Bogstrider Ash, Swamp Walker, not terribly relevant right now. Briarthorn, the Crown Cloudo, we've seen that. Fertile Ground, Elvish Harbinger, Fistful of Force, a nice trick, Guiltleaf Ambush. Again, now that's the kind of thing that can really mess things up, because it doesn't matter that they only have one power. So frequently, you're going to be running into Kinspell Skirmishers, Kithkin Great Hearts with just one toughness. And those two little elf warriors that you flash out at instant speed for 3 mana can often take 2 monsters down.
Yep, and that would be just backbreaking for John.
Yep, Guardian of Cloverdale, that's kind of a win more card generally for Marcio in this matchup. If he's got to 7 mana and can happily spend his turn casting a 4/5, then realistically I think the Fat Lady's kind of singing with that one. Seed Guide Ash, Treefolk Harbinger, a pair of the Weed Prune and Poplars, Bosk Banneret, which cost him a life in game 1.
Yep.
The Bramblewood Paragon, great card. Everbark Shaman, arguably the MVP, although we haven't really seen it do much thus far today. Doesn't stop it being a great card. Leaf Crowned Elder.
Yep.
And he finishes off with a Lissalana Bowmaster. Just looking through his sideboard here, I don't know whether there's anything in particular he will have brought in. I mean, really, you want early defense, don't you? If you can find it, just looking through with.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a number of cheaper creatures which you might look towards. Things like Winnower Patrol, Guiltleaf Seer, Elvish Branchbender, even an Elvish Eulogist. Hornet Harasser could be very good because it creates a situation where John can't reasonably attack simply because he'll trade 2 creatures for the 1 blocker. So we may see Marcio sideboard out some of the really expensive cards like the Guardian of Cloverdale in exchange for some of the cheaper creatures. It will be interesting to see what the final decision is on that. As we start the 3rd game here, John Finkel, of course, after a loss for the first time this weekend, or this Sunday of play, only the 2nd time this weekend, losing only once in the Swiss to Masashiro Kuroda, and actually taking an intentional draw. Funny story with that, John is the type of player who decided he was going to keep playing to hopefully help some of his friends who were in top 8 contention, people he quoted like Nikolai Herzog and Mike Hran, and kept playing despite the fact he could have drawn in or conceded to people to help get them in. In the very final round, he was playing the Spaniard we saw lose in the quarterfinals, Calafel, and Calafel said, "Dude, you definitely should draw with me so I can get into the top 8. You've never heard of me. You want me in the top 8. And John said, "Yep, you're right."
All right, well, here we are at 1 game all, and John well away, although turn 3 Oblivion Ring comes out to get rid of the Wizened Sen. So that means the Skirmisher is back down to manageable levels at 2-1. No Mana Screw this time for John, and in he goes, and he spends 4 for the Latchkey Fairy, 3/1 flyer.
I think this is actually a pretty good start from his opponent for John Finkel, simply because he hasn't been able to get on the board with many creatures. Play the free kinship spell Treefolk that's been causing so many problems this weekend, the Leaf Crowned Elder. Yep, he's still going to be able. John's still going to be able to get in with the 3/1 in the air, the Latchkey. But I would put Marcio behind on this situation simply because he hasn't been able to get on the board. Oblivion Ring doesn't block, even if it gets rid of that creature for a turn.
Sure. All right, so Fingal now, he's got a Skirmisher, so I guess he could decide to use that and come in for 4 with the flyer. And let's see what he does. Blue and a Plains. And no, he's just going to bounce, and that's a big tempo loss for Carvalho.
Yep.
And now we are going to see Skirmisher. Yep. Yes, there it is. And in we go for 6 damage. That is Carvalho from 15 down to 9. We are going to be done with this one very quickly unless Carvalho can stabilize. The early game, we are still very much in it, and that is not what Carvalho wants at all.
No, and I think you never want to second guess these players because again, as I've been saying all weekend, they are the top of the heap. They're very good. But if I'm Marcio Carvalho in this matchup, I think I don't keep a hand that doesn't have a spell for turn 1 or turn 2, and I think I reach for my sideboard to make sure I get one of those.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, he comes out with Elvish Harbinger, I do believe.
Yep.
So we'll have a look to see as he flicks through his deck. And he says, how about Nameless Inversion? That seems like the correct answer.
Yep, definitely seems very important for taking care of that latchkey fairy. The Elvish Harbinger, one of the ways he plays the Oblivion Rings, you mentioned that he had the one plains. He also has the Fertile Ground and the Harbinger, so he really has 3 sources of white in order to play those 2 Oblivion Rings.
Absolutely. Just suppose for a moment he hadn't. People often will play just a single land for a splash of 1 or maybe 2 cards. Would you do that? Would you want more than a single source if you had 2 cards as important as Oblivion Ring?
I usually want to try to get at least 2 for the most part, but when you've got the opportunity to have one for free, for example, with the Elvish Harbinger, then it's pretty easy.
For sure, of course. All right, so the Harbinger blocks.
Had a fistful of force cast on the Harbinger. When he moved that into the red zone, I thought that might be the play. We'll see if John's got anything, or if he's just going to lose the 2/2 to get 5 damage in.
Yeah, 5 damage in. Carvalho drops from 9 down to 4. That is perilous territory.
Yep, and of course 2 mana is spoken for on his turn in order to Nameless Inversion the latchkey, or even if he saves it for John's turn, that makes it a little bit harder for Marcio to play the creatures he needs to get ahead.
Kin Harbinger from Finkel, so now it's his turn to go look. It's nice to see tutoring effects back, because so many tutors were incredibly powerful, and you couldn't consistently play with them in the environment.
Yep.
Finkel there goes to get the Kinspell Balloonist, one of our classic finishers in his deck. So Marcio Carvalho will know that the writing is on the wall, unless perhaps he can go, first of all, I'll Nameless Inversion your fairy, get that flyer out the way, then I make Cloud Crown Oak, maybe. That can get in the way of the Balloonist, but not the one that Balloonist makes fly. Okay, Leaf Crowned Elder comes down. Passes the turn. Because of the elf, he has the Nameless Inversion mana.
Yep, now he's got to figure out which one he's got to deal with, the 3/1 or the Kinsbale Balloonist.
Well, at 4, do you not just deal with the present threat? Because you kind of go, I don't really want to be on 1. Oh, hey, I might forget the Boss Banneret again.
I would be inclined to say so, but you have to look at the reality of the situation. Either way, if he doesn't have a second answer, he's dead next turn.
Yep.
And so by sitting through this, he'll kill the Kinsbale Balloonist, then he just has to come up with a solution to the 3/1.
So there's the Balloonist. And there's the Nameless Inversion, to precisely nobody's surprise.
Going to take a peek at the top card to see if
for
it's
Kinship.
relevant.
Kinship on the Leaf Crowned Elder. Just leaves it back there.
He's going to have Gilt Leaf Ambush possibly here to put it on the bottom so that he can try to help find himself an answer.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, smart man, Bill Stark. I like having you here.
No.
Kawhi says, no, I don't like that, thank you.
Nope, he's got very few outs he's got to hit here. And John says, we'll put that land on the bottom. Oh, looks like we found an answer in the Lisalana Bowmaster. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the crowd gives a groan. Now, it's tough. You kind of feel bad for Marcio Carvalho here. So many people are such huge fans of John Finkel that you kind of get a sense that the crowd is rooting for John over Marcio. But Marcio's had a really good weekend. He's a very solid player. I'm sure there's a lot of Portuguese players that are very excited to see him here. And you don't want to take anything away from him just because he's playing against John Finkel.
Oh, absolutely. And, I mean, he's handled himself fantastically well, because it was a very tricky quarter-final, I can say, against another Hall of Famer. And, he continues. I said in my introduction, he's the definition of a pro. He's around the whole time. He works hard. He's solid. Doesn't make many mistakes. Doesn't get flustered. But he is beatable. And sometimes you feel that John isn't beatable.
Yeah. John happy to trade his 3/1 there for the Bowmaster before giving his opponent the opportunity to simply play an elf spell to kill it for free.
Absolutely. It's interesting the way that card advantage now comes in many different forms. The classic card advantage of Distant Melody for 2 is card advantage +1. But on the other side, you've got Thorntooth Witch. I play a spell, I kill something. That's 1 for naught is card advantage +1. And these different styles, they're both card advantage decks in a way, but from 2 completely different sides of the spectrum.
Absolutely. We get a Black Poplar Shaman added to the board here, and the Leaf Crown Elder is going to get in. John's looking to get some action here. The ground is starting to bog down. He's got a lot of time to find, and there's a great answer. Loves those card draws, even in an aggro deck. It's so rare to see aggro decks that can draw as many cards as John can with the Distant Melody and the Mole Drifter. And on top of being able to play the Mole Drifter this turn, wow, that's a huge addition to the board with the Gold Medal Harrier. So it looks like John has all but sealed up this match, but we still get a turn to find out if Marcio Carvalho can come up with something.
Yes, now this game, of course, because it's 1-1, so we're looking at...
yes, game, yeah.
So this would be 2-1 to Finkel. Yes, and there it is, 2-1 to John Finkel. He moves ahead, needs one out of the next two. Carvalho now into the last chance saloon. But what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the floor once again. You can see in the background there that Ming Shi and Mario Pascoli are busy shuffling away. That means more things have happened down there. Let's see if we can get down to our reporter on the floor, Mr. Scott Johns. Scott, what do you got for us down there?
So this was a totally different game than the first one. This time, Ming-Chi actually got to get into Millstone mode, and we got to see something real different that I haven't seen a lot of in this format. Usually, in different formats, different crazy things can happen when you're loading up your opponent's graveyard with cards, but I haven't seen a whole lot of that in this format. Not so true with Mario's deck. A makeshift mannequin went by, which fortunately went into the graveyard, but what did also happen was that Mario had two Sunflare Elemental, the elemental it sacrifices to do damage to creatures or players based on elementals in the graveyard. They're able to do 12 damage directly to Ming-Chi's face for fatal.
Wow.
He put one out, put the other one out, pass the turn, shoot you, you're dead.
Wow, that's amazing.
Had nothing else going on, but it was just 4 mana, take 12, you're dead.
All right, so what's the score down there then, Scott? What's the actual scores on the doors?
That makes it 2-0 now.
2-0, and Pascali, as we kind of expected that that removal was going to be sufficient, and 12 damage, that's foolish.
Yeah, Ming-Chi has had a really good run this weekend, but it's unreal how tough that matchup is for him.
He is under the gun. All right.
John Finkel, very distinctive pat for taking the cards off the top of his deck. Always puts the 6 together and then puts that 1 over off to the side. No word on why he does that, but if you watch him mulligan, he does the exact same thing, but with only 5 cards and then the 6 card off to the side. Very interesting.
All right, now Marcio Carvalho, you called it earlier. You said, I'm not sure what happens with his opening hand. He really needs an early drop. He looked carefully, and okay, Treefoot Carpenter, 0-3, speed bump.
Yep, you got to imagine he's going to be finding a 2-drop. Yep. Either the Boss Banneret, perhaps Leaf Crowned Elder if he's already got there.
Yeah, I think he's gone for the Leaf Crowned Elder there.
That's a very fine play. Viewers at home interested in commenting on the match can do so at the MagicTheGathering.com forums. We do check them occasionally and try to voice back on what people are saying. So if you've got stuff to say, feel free to do so at MagicTheGathering.com.
Yeah, I must confess I'm very distressed to find that I wrongly allocated Nate Kading to the New York Giants. He is, of course, the San Diego Chargers kicker. I really should know better.
Yep, and we thank a viewer for pointing that out to us.
Yes. And as anticipated, I had a few little baseball comments in the forum. I can't imagine why. We might try and rectify that situation after the semi-finals for you. We'll see.
You may be doing some penance later, I got a feeling.
Yeah, a little bit of penance. All right. So here we are then. Finkel in with the perfect start of the Gold Meadow Stored into Skirmisher. Means I pile in for 3. But Marcio has some defense this time.
Already had the Banneret in his hand, we can assume, since he tutored up the Leaf Crowned Elder, and that's a phenomenal start for him. That's just really good.
For 3 mana, thank you. There's my Leaf Crowned Elder. It's my free spell every so often guy. And Carvalho's only on 17. Wow, there we go. Weight of conscience. Let's get rid of that. Thank you very much. Well worth the turn. Because you're not winning with Leaf Crowned Elder in play.
No, especially if it starts hitting things like Thorntooth Witch. Of course, that means that John didn't get to play a creature and didn't get to attack, so he's starting to get behind on the board. But we'll have to see what that winds up meaning, depending on what his opponent's plays are. No, a 4-4 for 4 is certainly going to get in the way of John Finkel from Marcio Carvalho on the Portuguese side of the table here.
One card.
See a draw from John. What's this one going to be? Looks like it's another island, although he is sitting on the Kinsbale Balloonist, which will allow him to start getting in if Marcio doesn't have either an answer to the 2-2 or one of his reach blockers. Probably the best possible card John could have had right now, simply because it will allow him to start getting some damage in.
In comes the Banneret.
That That's the seed guy dash.
Seat guy dash, I
Yeah.
beg your pardon. And of course, Finkel says that's absolutely fine.
Not afraid to leverage his life total to get in.
No.
Looks like he'll be doing that. Looks like he'll be getting in this turn. We'll see. But I've got a feeling he'll be getting in for quite a bit of damage after the Black Poplar Shaman was the only play from his opponent.
Sure.
John's kind of hitting a good amount of land here. I'm not certain that he wouldn't like to see a few action
I
spells.
tell you what he has got, though, as an action spell. He has in hand Kithkin Harbinger, which is very nice because he can Harbinger up for Wizen Sen, potentially, which would obviously be a little more threatening for Carvalho. He's also got Pestamite in his hand. Now, that means, again, if Carvalho just decides to be a little bit clever and pile in with the Seed Guide Ash because I'm big and I'm burly, well, that's another guy that won't be blocking. I think Finkel's in this one. I mean, yes, Carvalho's had a nice start, but again, the Kithkin deck is pretty resilient these days.
Yep, he's just it's so unbelievable how often he looks behind and all of a sudden there's 15 creatures on the board and they're going to the next game. Although you got to wonder if he didn't want to play the Pestermite to untap one of the lands and drop the Kithkin Harbinger there as well. The reason that he might not do that seems to be the plethora of blockers that can get in the way of his opponent's of his creatures from his opponent Carvalho. So we may see him use that as a offensive spell to tap the blocker so that he can get in.
Yep. Well, in goes Seed Guide Ash. And Finkel drops from 15 down to 11.
I'm back. I'm at 11, you're 13.
Oh no,
Yep.
I missed.
Verify the life total.
Yeah, that's right. I switched backwards because you went 1,
Two
4,
players
4.
a little confused over what the damage is.
We're all good, and the scores are correct as on your screen. Carvalho at 13, Finkel at 11, and Finkel does indeed lead this match by 2 games to 1. John draws. And there's the Wizen Sen, as we predicted.
Flying.
In comes. I'd like to fly, please. That is 6 damage through the air. Carvalho.
That puts
I'm on
Carvalho
7.
That puts Carvalho in a tight spot because John's got the Pestermite, like we said, when he held on to that instead of playing both. He's now got the Pestermite to tap whatever blocker is most relevant.
And it flies.
Yep, and he'll be getting in for lethal next turn if his opponent doesn't have something.
So we are right on the verge of John Finkel being in the final.
Absolutely, and boy, what an exciting final that would be. The Hall of Famer, all-time great.
Here we go, Pestermite, the guy down.
There
There's
it
the
is.
hand.
There we got a final.
John Finkel is through to the Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur final. Johnny Magic
And the crowd
will be
goes
the
wild.
last player in the building to be playing Magic here in Malaysia. Oh, wow. You would not guess from the look on his face, but even his heart must be pounding after that. He took Marco Carvalho down 3 games to 1. Carvalho said, if I can get to the late game, I win. Finkel said, you know, I don't like late games too much. I'm kind of thinking beginning and a little bit of middle will do me just fine. John Finkel through to the Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur final. That does not get much more exciting. The biggest name in Magic at the final table. All right, somebody is going to have to try and beat this man. It's either going to be a Chinese guy or an Italian. The Italian is Mario Pascoli, and the Chinese guy is Ming Shi. So let's go and have a look at what's going on with that. So what we're going to do, as Finkel and Carvalho there, Carvalho, you see he's done absolutely everything he could. He can hold his head up high, got past 1 Hall of Famer, couldn't get past 2. The gauntlet just a little bit too strong there. And what we're going to do is we're going to move up the other match to our feature table, bringing you the best possible coverage, cameras from every angle. The commentators will be at exactly the same angle we've been at all day, and it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, it's been a really exciting Pro Tour. You know, you had 4 Pro Tour champions in this top 8. By the time we got to the semifinals, it was the Young Guns who had taken down 3 of them, but the last remaining in John Finkel has still managed to stick it out and wind up in the finals. And we're looking at Mario Pascoli and Ming Shi. Soon will be starting here. They already have 2 games down. Mario's up 2-0 against his opponent, and Mario's deck is just a monster in this matchup. It's just so good, and the reason is because the blue-white Merfolk deck relies so much on specific cards being in play in order to be successful.
All right, so we're heading away. On the far side there is Mario Pascoli, the current Italian national champion, also the champion in 2004. He looks pretty solemn there. He didn't look solemn when he heard he was in top 8. He was jumping for joy. And it's great to see someone so excited like that when you achieve a dream, because the number of people who would like to play on one of those hallowed tables, it runs into the millions.
Oh, yeah, very high.
So fair play to him. Here we go then. We're underway with the turtle shell. Is that drown he's made down, or is that turtle shell?
Nope, that's
it
the
is
Drowner
Drowner Secrets on the right.
And then Sunflare Shaman, of course, is sitting across from the Drowner. Yeah. That was the card that allowed Mario to win, despite being pretty far behind. He just played 2 of them in the second game and just whomped his opponent for 24-some damage in 1 turn.
All right, well, let's take you through Ming-Shi's deck. At 1, he's got Aquitect's Will, Tide Shaper Mystic, and a bit of removal, Coordinated Barrage. At 2, we've got Deep Tread Marrow, a pair of Amoeboid Changelings, and Disperse. He's also got Cloak and Dagger in his deck, a pair of Drowner of Secrets, so that's nice. They were his first 2 picks of the entire draft. Streambed Aquitects, a pair of Paperfin Rascals, Merfolk, of course, chance to be 3/3s. Stonybrook Schoolmaster, Sage of Fables, and a counterspell, the Mana Leak, where you get to draw a card, Sage's Dowsing. Then at 4, we've got Ethereal Whiskergill. That's a 4/3 roadblock, essentially. Ajani Goldmane, fantastic Planeswalker. Latchkey Fairy, and more removal in Neck Snap. Then at 5, it's Changeling Hero. At 6, Ether Snipe. At 43,009, Knowledge Exploitation, but boy, that's well worth it when it comes down. And he's also got an X spell in the form of Broken Ambitions. So absolutely, Bill, the idea of Ming's deck is, am I alive, am I alive, am I alive? Have you got any cards left?
Exactly. And he's going to be fighting an uphill battle, as we keep saying in this matchup, because so many of his cards rely on being in play and building with power together as they remain in play, like that Drowner of Secrets he lost on the last combat step. Did lose the Clash, it looks like, with his Paperfin Rascal, which otherwise would have been a good blocker. And that Fester Creek from Mario Pascoli is such a good card against the Merfolk deck, because they've got so many X1s. Of course, Ming-Shi's missing out on a few of the important Merfolk you want that would normally be able to take care of that, with 0 copies of Stonybrook Angler, Silver Geldowser, and Judge of Currents in his main deck.
Absolutely. And perhaps is the Judge the most important of those within the archetype? Because what you really want to do, even if you don't have the crucial cards to block with, you've got that barrier of essentially fog effects by the life gain.
Yeah, usually you want the Silver Geldowser first, but as the season has progressed, players have moved the Judge of Currents higher and higher up on the importance of their list, because the Merfolk are typically very weak, so they take a lot of damage early on, but once they get that critical mass going, all of a sudden your attack's nullified by the fact they just milled you for 5 and gained 5 life.
Warspike Changeling there. That's a really nice card. I mean, a variation on a Hill Giant, of course, but not just a 3/3, but it's also, there's a red as well, gives it first strike.
The Warspike Changeling was, one of the important cards to come from Morning Tide. Interesting fact about Mario Pascoli, I was hiking with him earlier. He was a boxer for 6 years.
Wow, truly?
Truly a boxer. Got a leg injury, broke his leg, and that kept him out of it. So he put his strengths into Magic. Not sure if he's the type of guy you want to beat.
Wow. Okay.
Staring down the board with that 4/3 sitting across there. The Ethereal Whiskergill has what they call Island Home. It can attack if your opponent has no islands. It doesn't die, I guess, if you don't have one. But that makes it potentially a bad threat because it can't always get in. However, its stats as a 4/3 for 4 are just so phenomenal, especially because it flies, that players are willing to run it regardless of whether or not they think their opponent may have islands. And of course,
Next snap, there we go.
Yep.
All right, so that puts another card into the graveyard. Ethereal Whiskergill, it's a strangely neatly balanced card. I mean, some cards you just know are good, some you just think, bog hoodlums. And then you've got cards like Whiskergill. On the face of it, a 4/3 flyer. Surely there's a way to make that good.
Right.
And yet sometimes it does just sit there as a wall.
And as a wall, it's not that bad. Yeah, as Scott John might tell you, a 4-3 wall with flying is just fine. Of course, the Merfolk decks also have a number of effects that allow them to give their opponent islands, including Tide Shaper Mystic, Aquatex Will, both of which Ming Shi is playing. Streambed Aquatex, another one of the important commons from.
And yeah, there's Eye Blight's ending on the Drowner of Secrets. So the whole yes, Disperse, nice trick. Returns the Drowner to hand. Says, no, I don't want to be Eye Blighted, thank you. I don't care that you don't like me, I'll be back later on.
The look on Mario's face, one of none concern. He thinks, you know what, I've got 45 more removal spells in my deck. You're going to have more than one bounce spell.
Yeah. So, Fester Creep currently facing off Ethereal Whiskergill. Past the turn. And we're still at 20-20, but you know that the life score, this is a match where the life total is not going to be especially relevant.
Ming Shi has already managed to mill 2 cards from his opponent, one last turn and then one with the original Drowner, which was killed in combat. We will probably be seeing him try to maintain control of that resource with the Drowner and protecting it from the removal spells he's seeing from his opponent.
Realistically, is there any way that Ming can come out of this match alive if he doesn't win with Drowner? Is there any way he can just go a kind of conventional, some kind of beatdown route and say, here we are, you've got to deal with my Streambed Aquatex, make the Italian kill that, here I am, here's my Ajani Goldmane, I'm going to make all my average monsters a little bit better. Does he have a route like that, or are we literally looking at Drowner or go?
No, he's definitely got a route, and we're seeing it right on board. He's got the Streambed Aquatex to go with his 4-3. All of a sudden, at 20 life apiece, Mario Pascoli is going to have to find an answer to that big flyer, or we could see his opponent start turning lands into islands and getting in there.
I'll tell you what, that Ethereal Whiskergill, it's such a great card.
It is, yeah, it's very good.
All right. So,
Ming Shi nervously tapping the table. We've seen him shuffling his cards under the stress of the lights. Players at home watching and out in the audience don't realize those lights are actually pretty warm. Scott John said earlier his shoes were disintegrating. It felt so hot out there.
Yes,
and that can impact players' ability to maintain their composure as they're playing.
Melting into the tarmac, so to speak. Right. So, Pascali busily chewing one of the Magic Pro Tour pens. They're lovely little souvenirs. Changeling Hero down now for Ming. So we'll have that.
Changeling Hero, another big beatdown creature.
And that's very much also a kind of compensation for not having Judge of Currents, because he's just a lot of life gain all in one go.
Right. We're looking at, there Ming goes, pulling his hand back and shuffling it nervously. It's important to note that there's a difference between excited nervousness, which is probably what Ming's dealing with right here, and scared nervousness, which is a little bit different. Sometimes it looks exactly the same, but you can tell when a player's in a real tough position and they're not winning. That's when you see them more often with the scared nervousness.
Yeah, scared nervousness I'm quite familiar with. The whole excited nervousness, I'm not really sure how that one works. All right, so here we are, Fester Creep, Sunfire Shaman, Streambed Aquatex, Changeling Hero. That's the board. The red zone is empty. Players at 16 apiece. Game 3, no more losses allowed for Ming. Last chance saloon.
Yep. And it's important to remember that Changeling Hero is a changeling, so it does count as a merfolk, and he can pump that with the Streambed Aquatex if he chooses.
So that would make it a 5-5, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It would make it a 5-5, and of course that would gain him 5 life, which would put him pretty far ahead in the life race.
All right, so Pascali busy thinking away.
Looks like he made a movement with his pen to the pad, like he was going to take the damage. Yep, he did indeed.
And now Ether Snipe comes down and returns the Sunfire Shaman. So now, as we said, here's the alternate route. The Drowner's back in hand, but right now it isn't really needed.
No.
Ming's finding a way to win.
Yeah, absolutely. He's using those big, thick bodies he's got and saying, okay, removal guy, you better have some big removal to deal with the threats I'm coming with.
Yep. And of course, the Italian's already used his Eye Blight's ending, which is one of the sort of traditional, I can actually put almost anything in the bin in terms of size.
Yep.
The Ether Snipe would be gone now, for example, off an Eye Blight, which isn't true of his Pepper Smoke, his Tar Fire, his, release the ants.
Release the Ants is a pretty good card against some of the traditional merfolks that we're used to seeing in the merfolk deck. It looks like you might have just played a Seething Path Blazer, perhaps.
Yep, Seething Path,
which is
Blazer.
It's a good elemental for dealing with that Sunflare Shaman, because you can sack elementals to put it in your graveyard. And Scott Johns mentioned before that the Sunflare sacrifices to deal the damage. That's not quite accurate. It generally sacrifices because it deals the damage to itself, but you could actually activate its ability, put the ability on the stack, and then sacrifice it to your Seething Path Blazer to give it +2/+0 in first strike, incidentally counting itself then in the graveyard as an elemental when that ability resolves.
Right, okay, that's something that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily twig.
Yep, it's a pretty impressive card. It does a lot of stuff, and it can be very confusing to figure out what's going on with that Sunflare Shaman.
So once again, 4/4 life gain comes into the red zone. Pascoli looks and he says, yeah, okay, I'll take that as well. And now we're looking at 8 against 24, I do believe.
Things are not looking good for the Rome, Italy native. Pascoli likes to travel a lot outside of Magic.
All right, okay.
Said he just enjoys seeing the world. Magic, great opportunity to see the world while occasionally picking up a free vacation along the way.
Yep. And it's also interesting, someone like Quentin Martin, who spent a year traveling the world, and he kind of timed it so that he would just, oh, well, look, I appear to be in Thailand for a Grand Prix, or Singapore for a Grand Prix, and yeah, I might pop back to Europe for a bit because there's a Grand Prix that weekend. And it's a great kind of hook on which to have an extended vacation if you're like it, coming out of college and thinking about what I want to do with my life. Do I want to actually go and get a job straight away? Maybe I'm thinking I could even play Magic full time, you know, or at least mostly full time. And it's a great time, your chance to see the world. We've got a stack of Grand Prix coming up this year in all sorts of great locations.
Absolutely. The summer of Magic with the extra Grand Prix money and prizes being paid out. That's very exciting.
Absolutely. The summer series. And with one less Pro Tour, that does mean that the Grand Prix achieve extra significance, because if you want to be Player of the Year, or a level 8, as it is now, you actually really want to pick up some points on that GP circuit. And I know that, for example, Steve Sadin, he said that straight after Hollywood, he's jumping on a plane with me back to London and coming down to Grand Prix Birmingham. And, you know, if you're out there, North American guys, the Asian guys, we have the Japanese on the European circuit. It'd be great to see more of you from America and North America generally, because, you know, you're a great addition to the game of Magic, and we would like to see you on our home turf over on the European Grand Prix circuit. So save up those pennies or dollars or ringgits, whatever they are, and get over onto the Grand Prix circuit. And of course, never mind the pros. If you're an amateur, if you're just sitting at home and you're watching this for the first time, if this is your first Pro Tour, let's get out there. You can play in a GP anytime you want.
Yep, it's a lot of fun. Back in the game, Ming has been able to play his Drowner Secrets and has started milling half-heartedly, so to speak, his opponent, who shook his head a few minutes ago, looked pretty frustrated with the game and how it's shaping up here. Not that he's had a bad draw necessarily, but just that he's not going to win this one, it doesn't look like.
Right, so
plenty of time for a turnaround. Never know with these pros. Always see with the feature matches, games look like they're significantly going one way, and we've seen that with Finkel's matches today, and then all of a sudden they wind up turning around real quick. Blink of an eye.
So 8 land out for the Italian, 3 monsters in play against 4 monsters, 6 land on the Chinese side of the board. 8 life for Pascali, 20 for Shi.
You mentioned traveling for Grand Prix. During the lunch break, I had the chance to speak with Ming. He says he's excited about the possibility he may be going to the Beijing Olympic Games, which are coming up later this year.
Wow.
Very excited to be able to host that in his home country, and might even get the opportunity to go check it out.
That would be excellent.
Moving into combat, looks like we're going to have the Mirror Entity getting in there after a long think by the Chinese player.
The Mirror Entity.
Very good. Changeling Hero, Mirror Entity. They all look the same. They're shapeshifters.
Yeah.
Wise guy over here. We did have a couple players on our forums point out that there were some other Chinese players who have top-aided. Ming is, as we've been saying, the first mainland Chinese player who top-aided. There was a Chinese player from, I believe, Taiwan in L.A. in 2005.
Yep. Yeah, China's going to be such a developing market for Magic because you know that Magic is such a fantastic strategic educational tool. I mean, I use that in education back at home, and there's so many skills that Magic taps into. Now, never mind the social and the psychological skills, but the math is just incredible going on under all these decisions.
Yep, we've got a complex play here. Mario went ahead and blocked the Changeling hero with his Sunflare Shaman, and then activated it prior to combat damage to hit the Streambed Aquatex. It's a good play because what that will wind up doing is getting the Sunflare Shaman dead so that their life gain will not happen from the Changeling hero, but he didn't sacrifice the Sunflare Shaman to his Pathblazer, so he may not have seen that portion of the play.
Right, and milled away there was Makeshift Mannequin.
Yep, Ming checked the graveyard to see how many elemental cards were in before milling, just to make sure he couldn't save it by pumping and inadvertently making the Sunflare Shaman bigger. But, yep, Makeshift Mannequin no longer a factor in this match.
Also, a case of where the Makeshift Mannequin, if it had happened to go to hand while Ming is busy milling away, you're just giving Pascaline more and more options for the Makeshift Mannequin.
Yep. Get a big Axe Grinder Giant would have been a big spell there, but Ming had the counter spell. His opponent needs to pay free.
4 and dowsing.
Does have a wizard, so Ming will also be drawing a card.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Still has the Merfolk. He'll also be milling a card. Things are firmly in the Chinese player's control right now.
You got to feel irritated when you have 8 land in play and you find that essentially you got mana leaked.
Yeah. Yep.
That's just not good, is it? All right. Card draw for Ming. Pascaline, yeah, he's really not looking in good shape.
Ming used his Aquatex well to turn the Goblin land into an island, in addition to its regular type, so it's now a triple duel. He was able to get in earlier with his Changeling hero because he had the Streambed Aquatex in play. The Seething Pathblazer are able to become as much as a 4/2 first striker with sacrificing the Fester creep. That forces him to consider keeping the Changeling hero at home because he could now lose it to the Fester creep. Cloak and Dagger may play a role in whether or not he's going to get in. He can now equip, say, the Drowner Secrets or the Aether Snipe and be able to get in with 3 relevant attackers. I don't think we'll see him getting in with Drowner Secrets anytime soon, though.
Well, I guess he's hoping not to need to. In a way, the Drown of Secrets has become his secondary win condition.
Yep. And if the Changeling hero's got to stay home as a Merfolk, it'll go right on duty milling.
There you see that nervousness. I'll just twist my card around and around and around, and then he stops.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ming really loves the game. Says he plays it a lot. In fact, he came up with a alternative form of playing. I didn't get quite all the rules, but it's called Two-Headed Dragon instead of Two-Headed Giant. Came up with it a couple years ago with his friends. Players sit in a cross. 4 players sit across from each other at a table. The person across from you is your partner, and you play a team game.
Oh, sort of like bridge in a way.
Yeah.
That kind of playing opposite as your partner.
Yep.
Right, so Pathblazer is all that's left. Ethereal Whiskergill comes down. It gets equipped with Cloak and Dagger, +2/+0, and Shroud. Can't be targeted now, so no lash out on that right now.
Ming did take the opportunity to get in to get his Mirror Entity out of the way, actually, so that he could get the Whiskergill down. Now that his opponent has that island with the Aquatex well, takes the opportunity to get the Cloak and Dagger suited up on the 4/3. Now got a 6/3 attacker that can get through with that island and can't be the target of spells or effects. That's rough for Pascaline. He goes ahead and attacks it in.
He says, "No, I'm done there," which makes it 2-1 to Pascaline. All right, there's no doubt that if Ming is going to win this, it is going to take some time because he really doesn't have the capacity to blister his way through. Will John Finkel have a significant view about which of these two he faces in the final, do you suppose?
I think so, Rich. I think when you're looking at Mario Pascoli's deck, seeing all that removal, I think it has the best shot of beating John, although Mario's creatures are a little bit weak, as we see the Italian player a little upset there with how that match went. His opponent, Ming Shi, on the other hand, has the blue-white deck that really doesn't do enough to put John into much concern for losing. It doesn't have the early drops that can really get in the way. It doesn't have the type of removal and global wrath effects that you might expect needing in order to try to hold on. The Chandra Nalar and all the spot removal, on the other hand, really helpful for the black-red player. So he's hoping to get through here and possibly have a shot at that final.
Well, of course, on Super Sunday we always focus on the top 8, but I know a lot of you are tuning in for the first time in the weekend. Where have you been, you naughty people? And want to know what's been going on in the rest of the field. So while they're shuffling up for the next game, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the players further down the standings, the weekends that they had. So below the top 8, the guy in 9th, always the hardest place to be, but at least this time it was a clear point difference, 33 to 34. Matthias Kettel of Sweden, Martin Juser of the Czech Republic was 10th, and your guy Brandon Scheel was 11th and 12th. Steve Sadin, as we've said, planning to come to the European GP circuit. Chris Green was 13th. Fabian Demazo, he was basically put out by Mike Rohn in the penultimate round.
Yep.
And then Manuel Bucher, part of the World Team Champions, 16th, one of the beaten finalists from that match in New York, Thomas Preyer. And then we're into 17 to 24. Now they all get 7 pro points. And the way 6 pro points rather, and this is Matej Zatelkaš from Slovakia, 17th. Jan Masikar and Rafael Levy, they both had draws early in the tournament, and we were talking on the tournament centre, Bill, how great it could be for them as long as they kept winning. Eventually they couldn't quite manage it, and Brandon Scheel was the guy who had Rigid, Hero of Kinsbell, Cast Pestamite, Untap Rigid, tap it again, and that was the end of Rafael Levy's weekend.
Yep. Scheel's a really solid player. He's one of those guys who's always at the Pro Tour, sort of like Dave Price was many years before he got his big break. The king of the king of PTQs, they called him, and just kept having to go back in PTQ and always like a machine made it. This weekend he had a big finish, finally got the 11th place he wanted, and did take some big names down in the process, including Rafael Levy.
All right, so at 20th we've got Chang Chua and Daniel Grafensteiner, 21st. Shu Kimura was 22nd, and then Paul Chion, 23rd.
Yeah, interesting thing with Paul. He started out pretty well and then had a rough day too. But the really interesting thing is Shu Kimura. He is the top finishing Japanese player at this Pro Tour, and all the way down in 22nd.
Wow. Okay.
It's been a long time since we've seen a Japanese player, since that's where the spot where we saw the highest Japanese player, especially considering there are 2 Americans in the top 8, which we haven't seen a lot of over the past couple seasons.
That is extremely surprising, indeed. So Chion at 23, Taylor Webb 24. The second Japanese guy is Fumiki Nakano in 25th. Mark Konkel, we now know a little bit more about in 26th. Andre Müller, very anonymous weekend, but just quietly went 27th. And having been second at Valencia, 2 out of 3, quite, pretty decent, very decent money finish, obviously, in Valencia. But back again amongst the money, just picking up the dollars, which is great. Masai Kitayama, 28, and Shingo Kurihara. I got an email from a friend out in Japan, or has been out in Japan, Eli Kaplan, saying, no, you've done it again, Rich, you're mispronouncing the guy. It's spelled Shingu, but apparently Shingo Kurihara is what I need to say. So there we are, hope we've got that right now. Steve Locke at 30th, Nico Boni, another world champ there, and 32nd was Daniel Peachnik. Well, we'll dip into some of the lower standings, let you know how some of your favourite pros got on as we get the chance. But we are back with our game. It is underway in Game 4. And Mings kicked off with a deep tread Mero. Pascali, as yet, nothing on board.
One thing to notice about that top 32, there was one disqualification of a player who was in contention for top 8. Jürgen Hahn was disqualified in the very last round. So those who were wondering about where his name went, that was what was happening there.
Right.
Deep Tread Mero is the early lead from Ming, as you pointed out, and plays into his Game B plan, which is get his opponent on island somehow and beat down with creatures that otherwise couldn't or can get island walk. So it looks like that's what he's going to stick out doing, while Pascoli needs to find an answer to that too, and eventually, or he'll wind up suffering a pretty embarrassing fate here in Game 4.
And again, you see Pascoli there. Doesn't look happy at all. I wonder, have we seen any of them look happy, whether they've won or lost or just been playing?
They're all pretty serious. I don't know. You'd have to ask Mario's girlfriend Eliza, who's at home in Italy watching, whether he's always that gruff. But I got to imagine he's just a little frustrated about how the last game went.
Yeah, well, I've also got to say hello to your girlfriend, Bill, who posted on the forums and said she'd swap with me anytime for a week in Kuala Lumpur with Bill Stark.
Over Valentine's Day.
Oh, dear.
Thundercloud Shaman, real strong play there, gets met with the counterspell.
Yep.
get a cloak and dagger. With,
An interesting thought from Scott down on the floor is that Pascaline could be doing a bit of a class acting job here, because he looked deeply distressed, shoulder slumping when the Thundercloud Shaman met with the counterspell, the Sage's Dowsing. And it could be that he had makeshift mannequin in play. Thank you so much. There we are. Yes, all right.
That's Scott Johns. There's a reason he top-8'd so many Pro Tours.
Yeah, there really is. And he says, I swear I'm behind the other guy. Oh, and he really is. Look at that. Yeah, we can see on one of the cameras, he's miles away from Pascaline. He just called it right.
Latchkey Fairy happens to be a rogue, so it automatically suits up with that cloak and dagger.
Yeah, and although it has 1 toughness, that really doesn't matter right now because it has Shroud. It cannot be targeted. Thundercloud Shaman would have dealt with it fine because that... oh, no, it wouldn't, would it? Actually, if Thundercloud Shaman had come down, would that have killed the Shrouded guy?
Thundercloud Shaman is, sort of the
deals
Wrath of God
1
effect.
to each, isn't it? So
for the number.
For the number, so it would have done. It would have dealt with it. And there's a bounce spell
That will kill the Thundercloud Giant because it has a mannequin counter on it.
Yep. So that's gone away.
The 5
those
damage from that
kill
Latchkey Fairy, that could be
That's
problematic for Pascaline.
That really is quick. That's the thing. Without the ability to target, in for 5, Pascaline, I believe, drops down to 11, or is it even less?
Potentially, we will know in just a moment.
It's 7, Pascaline, so we are well and truly in trouble.
Got to give a lot of credit to Ming Shi here with a bad matchup, just fighting through tooth and nail to try to get in wins it however he can, carefully playing with the Whisker Gill Elemental that last game so he get Cloak and Dagger on it, now doing the same with the Latchkey Fairy. Things are looking up for this kid. You got to have a lot of respect for what he's been able to do this year, being quote-unquote a no-name on the way in.
For sure. And something else that he's done, one of the things we encourage you to do as you're starting on your road towards maybe winning a PTQ or getting to the Pro Tour is to say, have a plan. Ask yourself, what does my deck do? And the first stage is you answer the question with, well, my deck mills people to death. That's my Drowner of Secrets. But then the better players say, what could my deck do? It could do this. It could make a 5/1 flyer and kill you in 4 turns.
Yep, and it's important not to get what they call tunnel vision, and that's a situation where you picture yourself doing one plan and sticking to it, and then and forgetting. Ooh, very,
look at
very
that
close play there.
Violet pool. It was going to get rid of the Drowner, make a 1/1, could have traded for the 5/1, but Ming says, no, no, no. That was negated. Non-creature spell, Violet pool, in the bin. I think that could be the key play right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That was huge. There was a really big opportunity for Pascaline there. And just
now, Pascaline's shoulders are slumped again, and this time, I don't think it's because he's got makeshift mannequin in hand. I think that's because he's heading for game 5.
Yeah, it might be the real deal this time. It's tough. It's a tough situation for him to be in. Especially as you go into Game 5 in this situation, you felt like you were up 2 games to 0. All the momentum's been taken from your sails, and so far in the 2 games that he's lost, it seems like Ming Shi has just had an answer or a solution to every single thing that he's tried to do. So
there it is, 2 games apiece.
Momentum is definitely in the Chinese players' court, but of course we play the games. We don't just assume. So we got one more game to go.
And let's not forget that when we started the match, we had Pascaline as favourite. He went 2-0 up. That's what we expected to happen. And what he must remember is that that's what he expected to happen.
Yep.
At least one hopes. I mean, of course, where you have the real danger is less about seeing the last couple of games going badly for you. It's if he goes into the match thinking that that's what's going to happen. Because there's nothing more dangerous than actually fulfilling your own worst expectations. Because humans are very good at that. Yep. So, Pascaline now, there we are, he takes his glasses off, gives his face a rub, it's almost like the Saito slap.
Face slap, I was just going to say,
tomorrow, Saito, not the best weekend. If we carry on down the standings, see if we can pick out some big names for you before we head in to the final match of the semi-finals. Robert van Medevoorde of the Netherlands finished 35th. Julio Barra, top 8 from Valencia, 37th. Johan Sadekpo had quite a decent time from Sweden, 28 points, made him finish 39th. Shuhei Nakamura, who was the leader of the Player of the Year race coming in, he finished in 41st place from Japan. Gab Nassif was in the 40s, as was Roger Martin of the Netherlands. He was well in contention, fell away right at the end. And now we're heading towards the 50s. In 50th place, Nikolai Podovin. Although not a great weekend, still, pretty decent. He was in the money. And Podovin is someone who has great mental strength.
Yeah.
Last year, saw in this kind of situation, if he's in Pascoli's chair, he's thinking, Ming, you're very, very lucky to have won 2 games, but we play best of 5 and you're going home.
Yep.
And he is a real tough opponent, Nikolai Podovin of Russia. Into the 60s, the biggest name there would be Rasmus Seebast of Denmark. 60th place, Kazuya Midamura, right next to Frank Karsten. And Melissa de Tore in the money in 62nd.
Interesting story. Of course, Melissa de Tore was the first woman to cash in a traditional payout at Pro Tour Valencia. But there is also a second woman playing this weekend. Reina Magica was her name. Crazy name for being in a Magic
You made that up, right?
No, absolutely for real. Kelly Diggs, the copy editor for us here at MagicTheGathering.com, and I were talking about it. Perfect name for the game, and she's actually a woman purportedly from Finland.
Okay, fair enough. So 63rd, Ray Sato. 64th, Quentin Martin from England. And in 65th, sneaking into the money, John Stoltzman of the United States. So no Netterstrom from Denmark. It's no cash for you. All right, well, it looks like the players are shuffled up, and Ming is having a little think about whether he wants to mulligan or no. He's sitting there he is, pondering away. This isn't a decision you want to get wrong.
No, absolutely not. And the talk we've had with players this weekend has varied on whether you should mulligan or not. I talked to Mike Ron, and he said he is just the greediest with hands, keeps hands he probably shouldn't, whereas former World's Top 8 competitor King Kroner once wrote that the rule on mulligans is universally, when in doubt, throw it out. Something that you never know which one is correct there, but it looks like Ming might have kept a pretty risky hand here. He's sitting on an island in hand, 2 islands on the board, just drew another one.
Drawn an island.
Got a hand of white cards and an Aether Snipe with Aquatex Well that won't be doing very much.
I guess the only positive thing you can say is that he does have access to a turn's worth of grace if he decides to evoke the Aether Snipe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was on the play as well, so had 1 less draw step to on the draw, so yeah, with the extra card, all the more reason to go for a new one. Blind Spot Giant, says Pascali.
Not exactly that frightening just at the moment. It's just a 4-3 that does nothing.
Yeah.
Until there's another giant. Oh, we got a planes for the young Chinese player, Stony Brook Schoolmaster. Very important card for him.
Life expectation of that one, do you reckon, Bill?
What's that, Rich?
Life expectation? Probably not a lot.
No, not very long. That will be dying pretty young. Although he does get the Aquatex Will to get the draw out there and get an island going for his opponent.
All right, so Pascali looks a little more in this game. It looks like he's got his head into gear. He took his glasses off, gave his face a shake, and said, "I may not get to the semi-final of a Pro Tour that often. Perhaps I better really make the most of it." And whatever he said to himself in that moment, he seems to be leaning forward and getting back into it. And, wow, there is a roar from the crowd.
The Italian players watching just went nuts. Yep, the Chandra Nalar, what a great play for him right there. And I saw him tap 5-man and thought, uh-oh, if that's the Planeswalker, the Chinese player could be in some trouble. He needs to find a way to get a creature on the board that can potentially deal with the Chandra Nalar. Otherwise, he's in a lot of trouble.
So Chandra Nalar starts at 6. For +1, it's a damage to a player. -X, it's X to target creature. -8, it's 10 to the player and all their guys.
Has seen some constructive play at States this year. Brandon Shield, who got 11th here, won with it in Des Moines, Iowa, and I believe a Nebraska player won with it as well.
How many times have you mentioned Iowa so far?
I only mention it when it's relevant.
Oh, okay. I believe you. Hey, look, it's a swamp. They've got swamps in Iowa.
Sorry, it's easy to talk about Iowa when you're talking about Magic. It's just the UK we're struggling to come up with a reason to bring up while discussing the game.
Touché. All right, so Pascali.
Buying himself some time, Ming-Chi evoked the Aether Snipe to get the Chandra Nalar out there. Oh, there's the giant that he needed to get the 4-3 active. Yep.
Okay.
Thinking about his play.
And in he comes.
What?
And the Italian's getting pretty voluble out there, as
Yes.
Italians are wont to do.
Led by Antonino De Rosa and some of Pascoli's friends.
Yeah, now I've got to tell you that I have a little piece of paper here from Antonino De Rosa. Last night, when the top 8 was announced, he said, Rich, you want to play a little game? I'm going to write a name down on here. I'm going to tell you who wins the Pro Tour tomorrow. Don't look, but after the final, you can reveal it on air and show that I was right. Or he had the grace to say, or wrong. So I haven't looked at it. I said I'll take the other 7 against whatever name you've put in there. But he wasn't foolish enough to take me on that one. So we'll see how much Antonino knows about top-level prediction later on. All right, so here we are, Pascali.
Ming with a 1-1.
2 and
Pascoli with a huge removal spell. That
Lash
might not
out.
hit though. I believe Ming Shi has the counter spell in his hand. He does.
Can he afford to use it?
Well, he's in a position where he needs to potentially block, even if he has to counter that Chandra. It's a tough spot to be in. It's just really pretty insurmountable. So we'll see what he opts to do.
All right, well, there you see the hand. Yes, he counters it because he feels obliged. Lash out goes away, but Pascali will not mind that at all. He untaps. Swamp comes down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's Chandranala. Yeah. There's no doubt about it that... Oh,
Yep,
there is
that's
the
when he's in the
hand.
hand.
We are done in the semi-finals of Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur, and the man who goes forward to face Johnny Magic, John Finkel, is the Italian reigning champion. You see him there. Another... there we go. Thanks very much. He pulled himself together. Mario Pascoli pulls himself round. A lot of success and congratulations to Ming Shi from China. What an outstanding effort he put in to get himself all the way to the semi-final. An incredible run. And Bill, you've got to be impressed with both of them.
Yeah, very much. I was pretty surprised to see how well Ming Shi tried to hold on to winning that matchup. I'm shocked actually that he managed to win 2 games, considering how bad I felt that matchup was. But he also played pretty tight against an Italian that was doing very well, and also knew what was going on. Apparently, the Italian Mario Pascoli has a lot of hookups with the Italian connection in the Italian community, as well as Antonino De Rosa, and so it's no surprise to see him going on, despite an excellent effort by his opponent Ming Shi.
All right, well, we are done in the semi-finals, and that means it's time for the 7th inning stretch.
Now, earlier today, you made a bit of a diss on baseball. Captain Kidney from our forums was pretty upset by that, so I think we ordered up some penance for your British cricket comments regarding baseball.
All right, then. Well, just for you, we will have now the well-known Magic Classic, Take Me Out to the Card Game. So here we are, Take Me Out to the Card Game. Goes something like this. Take me out to the card game. Take me out to the show. Buy me some sleeves and a new fat pack. I don't care if we never get back, so it's root the Hall of Famer. If they don't win, it's a shame. So it's 1, 2, 3 jewels, you're out at the old card game. There we are. So Randy Bueller and Brian David Marshall, thanks for the applause, boys. No, hold it. Randy Bueller, Brian David Marshall, that, my friends, is known as a precedent. And we will see you in Hollywood.
I'm not getting paid enough.
Meanwhile, never mind. Meanwhile, we will see all of you. Thanks for being with us for 2 great semi-finals, and we will be back for the final in just 10 minutes' time. All right, so set your watches 10 minutes from now. Don't go to sleep. In Europe, it's Sunday morning now. It's Sunday evening here in Malaysia, and in America, we are ready to go. So, for all of you out there, we are done with the semi-finals. We are going to have a short break, and we will be back in 10 minutes' time. So for now, see you in 10 minutes for the final of Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur.